All right, I think we are live. Welcome back to, I don't know, what are we on day three
Yeah.
in this series? So, if this is your first time joining, thank you so much for being here. We have been on a theme this week around authenticity. And so, if this is your first session tuning in with us, then make sure you check back to the other conversations and we'll link them in the comments. But we're glad that you're here. Let us know, where are you tuning in from? Let us know in the comments where
Yes.
you're joining us from, whether you are joining us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube. We love technology because it helps us to be more efficient.
Yes.
So I am back with the amazing Alechia Reese, and we're going to have some real talk today around authenticity, but really, what does that look like when you are
Mhm.
met with change, with challenge, loss, disruption in your life and in your career? So, how you feeling this morning, Alicia?
Um, I'm focusing on the current moment. So in
Mhm.
this moment, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, but that's just because my mind is like, you know how your laptop, you have like 12 tabs open. That's how my mind works. I have a bit of ADD. So for those who work with it, it can be challenging. So feeling a little overwhelmed.
Okay. Okay.
What
Thank you
about
for
you? How are
sharing
you
that.
feeling?
My word for this morning was gratitude. And so I'm definitely feeling gratitude. I'm also feeling, let me reflect on the right, not on the right word, but on the accurate word for it. I guess a little bit, um, maybe, I don't know if it's overwhelmed, but just like there's a lot going on this
A
week.
lot
There's a
happening.
lot going on in the business today. And so, yeah, so my mind is like, okay, let's focus on the present. I'm grateful for this moment. So I'm working to stay present.
Ooh, I think
Mhm.
that's a big one because it is so difficult to stay in the present moment when your mind just keeps thinking about the future responsibilities, the things that you have to do, the time that they're due by. I remember I was telling you yesterday, like I was so worried about a situation that had to be handled on Tuesday, and I woke up concerned, I went to sleep concerned. The day before I was worried, trying to figure it all out. And
Mhm.
then when I got to the day, I was like, well, let me try something. I did it, and then it gave me a reprieve. And I was just like, okay, one down, 10 to go.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like it keeps mounting. And so it can be very, very difficult because the tree is like right here. It's literally right here. So there's no view of the forest or even the path forward sometimes.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
acknowledging and even knowing, I think for me a good thing is to hold on to past positive experience.
Mhm.
So PPE, not PPP, but PPE, past
And
positive.
the other PPE.
Exactly.
Past positive experiences, not your face mask and your gloves.
Exactly. um, hold on to your PPE, and what that does is it helps your mind to come back out of those like anxiety riddled moments,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you can go back to a time where you were experiencing something similar and it worked out.
Yeah.
It worked out because you're still here. Now, I don't know what it actually worked out as, but either way, you're still here. And that means you have another opportunity to make it or create it or ensure that you work to have it to be what you know you want and need it to be.
Absolutely. That is so good. So you starting us out today with an inspirational word, and I love it. I love it. So we see Miki joining us from Chicago. We
Hey,
have
Chicago.
Atlanta joining us, Nashville joining us. So we're so glad that you're here. And if you're watching in on LinkedIn, y'all, now listen, this is streaming a few places, but
Yeah.
we're talking about authenticity, which is very much connected to transparency. And hands down, favorite place to hang out on the internet is LinkedIn. So if you are joining us on LinkedIn, let us know in the comments whether you're watching us live right now at 9:12 a.m. on 9/27/23, or whether you're watching this at some other time on the replay. Where are you tuning in from, and how are you feeling? Like, drop into the comment section. Like, we do this at Career Thrivers, whether we're leading a session or just internally with our team. But drop into the comments 2 words to describe how you're feeling right now in this moment. You don't have to describe anything, explain anything. There's no judgment, right? It just gives us a space and place to share. Yes, Mickey, sharing our vulnerability and our transparency about how we're feeling presently, right? Because we can certainly get into the habit, especially in the work environment, of just throwing fine on everything, right? We're like, how's it going? Fine. How are you feeling today? Great, right? And those aren't always accurate representations of what's happening on the inside of us. Sometimes those words are masks, right, for how we want to feel or how we want to project that we're feeling, and they're not actually in alignment with what we actually feel. So I see Melissa, good morning from Atlanta. I love that. Okay, I love it. Mickey, she says her 2 words are not concerned. I love that. Not concerned. It's fine. It's gonna be what it's gonna be, right? We love that, and that is so aligned. I think that's a perfect place to maybe lean into this conversation today. Chad says here to support Alechia. She's
Oh, thank
amazing.
you, Chad. You are too.
Yes, that is so, so good. I love these comments that are coming
Yes.
in. Yes, and loving the support. We love
Yes,
that.
we
We love
need
that. We're
that.
so glad that you're here.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think that's one thing that folks don't always know how to accept, because it's like if you accept support, then you accept that you don't have it all together, or that you're not perfect, or you haven't figured it out. And it's like, hey, guess what? You do not have to have it perfect. It does not have to already be figured out because, and they say, at my big age, it's like, hey, give yourself a little bit of grace, because at every age you're going through a different stage, a different phase, a different transition. I know for me, my parents are getting older, so I'm
Mhm.
going through that piece, especially dealing with someone who now is having, I don't want to say bouts, but who's now experiencing major memory loss. Dear Lord, I'm sorry. Nothing that I have done or could have done previously could prepare me for this experience, watching someone you love and care about not be their whole full selves.
Yeah,
So it's okay to say, hey, in this moment, I don't got it all together. Yes, I do need some additional support because I am struggling. It is okay. Now that's the only thing that's okay. We're not saying the other piece is okay. The last person told us it is okay. But that is okay to say, hey, in this moment I need support. And then to find community that will not only offer you some support to help refill your cup, but then also in them giving you support, it allows you to then share back to them as well. And sometimes sharing back to them
absolutely.
is just sitting in their presence because you have nothing else to give. And that's okay.
Mhm. 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 That is so good. So I'm going to kick off our first question, and I'm just going to throw it into the chat so that you all can let us know your answers as well. But in moments when we are experiencing loss or grief, we often feel the need to kind of put on this brave face to kind of show up and, you know, every I dotted, every T crossed. But how do you really balance being a source of strength for others, especially because we know we have leaders that are on, right? And we just jump in and we dove right in because we love doing this, but we'll introduce ourselves and all that stuff in a second here. But as a leader, when you're having to show up and balance that being a source of strength for others while honoring your process and feelings authentically, what
Yeah.
has that looked like for you, Alechia?
So I'm a very, because I have ADD, and it's something that I work through. I don't like to say struggle with, but it's something that I work through, and it works with me. I must have schedules and times that are specifically mine, because I also have a 13-year-old daughter who is homeschooled. Plus, I'm an entrepreneur. Plus, I sit in a position where I am a learning and development director. So there's a lot, right, that happens. And so for me, I always bake in time for me to just spend moments with myself doing only what I want to do. And I know for a lot of people that's like, well, how can you do that? That seems difficult, or that seems hard. No, it's not. If you cannot find 1 hour in your day, and if, let's say, you say an hour is too long, 30 minutes in your day to do something that only you want to do, then you are not so great at time management, and we need to start there. But for me, how I deal with that is I honor the fact that to whom much is given, much is required. And sometimes the required piece is for me to honor what my needs are. So spending that 30 minutes to an hour, what it does is it allows me to reconnect and honor and give myself what I need. Sometimes that's a nap. Sometimes that's a piece of good food. Sometimes it's some cold pressed juice. Sometimes it's a cry out session because I'm so overwhelmed. But giving myself just that 30 minutes to an hour. For me, it's an hour, but if you need 30 minutes, you just do your 30 minutes. But an hour of just me. Just me.
That is so important. And I think sometimes we don't create that space for ourselves because we feel like there's so much I need to do, right? We're
Yeah.
type A, we're high D. If you're familiar with DISC, we're achievers. And so it can sometimes feel like you can trick yourself into a bit of a dysfunctional belief that
Mhm.
any time of rest or pausing is wasting time. And I know that that's something that I've had to be very intentional to, one, be aware of. Right?
Mhm.
So that self-awareness muscle is really a muscle. So like
A
being
muscle.
aware of your thoughts, being aware of the stories that you're telling yourself
Mhm.
about what you need or what you think you don't need, and why you don't need it, right?
Mhm.
Oftentimes those things that we're telling ourselves is either steeped in other people's expectations or our background and upbringing, and it may not serve the now version of you. So
Yeah.
for me, when I think about that question, one, I think it's important to acknowledge the moments of grief.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we don't associate certain losses with grief. And so I spend a lot of time talking about career grief because it is very real. Like,
Yes.
we experience grief in our career and we don't give it that language. We think that grief is only associated with the death, that's, the feelings we have connected to the death and loss of a loved one. But grief is a natural emotion. It is a natural emotion that is unpredictable and that is complex, that's often in response to either a change in routine or a loss of expectation. So that looks like things like losing the job or not getting promoted
Yeah.
or microaggressions and having
Mhm.
toxic teammates on a team, or even getting the promotion and having to relocate. There's a grief that's associated from a
Yes.
disruption in that routine, even though you're going to something that's new and that is a good thing. So I think, one, just honoring that and acknowledging that the feelings that I'm feeling, what I'm processing, what I don't have language for actually is grief, I think, is the first place
Mhm.
to start. And then I think once you do that, it gives you the space to show up, one, authentically for yourself, whether
Yeah.
it's taking those small breaks like you mentioned or seeking out therapy proactively. Nothing has to be quote unquote wrong for you to have a mental check-in, much like
Mhm.
we have a preventative mindset around our internal health, right? You
Yes.
see an internal medicine physician or a gynecologist or, maybe even a cardiologist, right? You have a routine of preventative care, but sometimes we leave our mental health out of that. So that might mean therapy or counseling, or even maybe even coaching if you're in the midst of a career transition. You're like, I'm trying to figure out what's next, right? Like, maybe you need to enlist the help of a coach to help you to see around the corner and make those decisions. But I think that support for you is important. And then once you do that for the leaders that are on, especially for those of us who have direct reports, I believe that personal leadership is inextricably linked to how you lead other people. So when you prioritize your own well-being, your own mental health, your own how am I responding to the grief, the loss, the disruption that I'm experiencing, I think it helps you to show up better and more authentically with other people to help them process theirs. And sometimes that might mean, I can remember I was a sales manager at Pfizer, and we were going through a layoff. And at the particular time that we were going through the layoff, this particular team was the number one team in the region. So we were at the top of the ranking report. We were obviously needing to stay there, wanting to stay there, right? All these incentives and bonuses and trips tied to us ending the year well. But there was this massive disruption that everyone was feeling, this looming layoffs. And anyone who's worked in pharma, that's like usually kind of like every 18-month to 2-year type deal. It could be, I don't know if it still is now, but it definitely was then. And it can create a lot of anxiety. But what my team didn't know, that at the very same time, I had already been impacted by the layoff. So my role was going to be eliminated. So I can remember vividly moments where I would be in conversation with my team, helping them process how they were feeling about the looming layoffs that hadn't even, impacted them yet, while also processing my own emotions around, they don't know, but I'm laid off, right? Or I'm
Yeah.
laid off list, right? Um,
Yeah.
Processing, there are other opportunities, like all these leaders are reaching out, like, are you thinking about this? Like, looking internally for other opportunities, but also processing, is this a time for me to do something different? And so I
Yeah.
think so often for leaders, we experience that and we don't know how to navigate our own processing our own emotion with
Yeah.
also helping, team members or direct reports do the same.
Yeah, and it's honoring you first. And so a lot of times I always like to say, and it's just a personal thing, I don't want to bleed on other people, right?
Mhm.
Especially other people who don't have the capacity to handle what I'm experiencing. So I like to connect with folks who I know who are either on a similar or higher level than me, who
Mhm.
I know like I can bleed essentially, and it not affect you in such a way that you can't keep going. So for me, having that, like we were saying earlier, that level of support of folks who hey, I can go to you for this so that I can still show up the way my team needs me to, because we still do need to perform, even though I know that this is coming.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
the being authentic in saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling. It don't feel good. And yes, Chad, I agree. Therapy is for me, it has saved my entire life.
Yeah.
Therapy is a necessity. And for those who don't believe in therapy, that's fine. Get you a coach. There are so many different modalities and different types of therapy that you can subscribe to or you can try out. But what it does is it allows you to get out of your head, because whenever you're going through those changes and those disruptions and that loss, and I was saying like you have it right in front of your face, so you can't see anything else. It allows you to basically pull back, and it helps you to understand that, hey, you can actually pull back. Yes,
Mhm.
this is in your face. Yes, this is challenging. Yes, this is scary. But if you just adjust your proximity to the situation, you might be able to find additional solutions or alternatives that you can leverage, people who you can tap into, who can serve as folks who can guide you through the transition. It is, for me, of utmost importance that as a leader, you tell yourself the truth so that you're not saving everyone else while you are drowning.
Yeah.
Because the best swimmers, lifeguards included, when they're going out into the ocean to save someone else, if they are not grounded in a way that they can remain calm, even though the other person is super frantic, they both will drown. So you have got to get to the place and space to where you, and I firmly believe, put your own oxygen mask on first so that you can best serve, work with, and support those who you are sent to lead and support.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think especially in the corporate environment, I think there are so many um just thoughts around this, especially the topic of therapy. And I love that Chad mentioned, that there's so many different personalities and leaders that leverage therapy. But I think sometimes there can be this, thought that if you share that are in therapy, or if in some way, shape, or form you are proactive in the way about your mental health, that something is wrong with you, or that
Mhm.
you aren't strong enough, capable enough, et cetera,
Yeah.
to lead, especially for women. And I think that that's something that um, hopefully through the pandemic, I feel like I've seen, and I'd be curious about your thoughts on this, organizations be more proactive around the stigma that's connected to
Mhm.
mental health and therapy by
Yeah.
being bigger proponents of it, but also encouraging their leaders to embody it and to not think of therapy as like, hey, something's wrong with that leader, or to think that just because you heard someone in therapy, they're not suited to be promoted, or they're not suited to
Yeah.
lead, or you're going to put too much on them if you assign the project to them. And maybe that's, I feel like we're honing in on this topic, but maybe that's the takeaway for this today is like helping not only us as leaders to process how we, in terms of our own personal leadership, navigate change, challenge, and loss, but also helping leaders to recognize that as the leader, your direct reports that might be experiencing change, challenge, and loss, and leveraging different modalities so that they can actually thrive through what they're experiencing, need you to show up as an authentic leader, to not hold bias
Yeah.
surrounding how they are showing up for themselves. And I think that is sometimes overlooked as a responsibility of the leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because and here's the thing, your goal is to empower your team to be able to produce,
Mhm,
grow, to be able to work in that team with you. And if you are consistently putting out messaging that does not serve to meet whatever your ultimate goal is, you cripple your own team. And what's the point of that?
mhm,
Like, as a good leader, your entire, and not your entire, but your primary goal is to ensure that you are empowering a team, to act, to serve, to produce, and to hit your targets and hit your goals.
yeah,
Whatever that looks like, and we talked about this, I think, on the first day, is identifying what that team needs by first identifying what you need. Identify what you need first. And then if your team member is saying, hey, this is what you need. And then to, like, I used to have conversations with my team about some of the things that I was working through and working on,
mhm,
so that they felt too like, okay, so you mean perfection isn't required over here? And it's like, no, it's not. I
mm,
understand that you will never be perfect. And if you strive for perfection, then I'm going to always get the blowback of your major disappointments when you don't hit perfection. But if you strive for excellence, then we get to celebrate together the things that we did fulfill, because your focus is on excellence, not on being perfect.
yeah. That that is so good. So as we wrap up today, if you have questions, let us know. Put them in the comments, or things that you would add. I love what Melissa shared here. Yes, identify what you need first. And if you have not caught this, we're calling it a series. I don't know, Alicia. Let's just call it the authenticity series. Like,
Oh, yes.
that's what we've been discussing all week. So if you missed any of our past conversations, we will I'll go back in the comments of this post and just link them out, just so that you
Mhm.
can tune in to the different days. We had different conversations around. Yesterday was really honed in on relationship building and how do
Yeah.
you maintain authenticity in your connection with other people and add value. So we'll make sure that you're tied in to
Mhm.
those conversations. Curious about and I have one, that's top of mind for me, resources and tools that have been helpful. I can remember, so during that same stint right before my sales role, I came into a sales role from a marketing role that I was in.
Mhm.
And during that time, quick story, so I relocated from Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I live, to the middle of Manhattan in New York
Ooh.
about 3 months after I took that new role. So, new city, new team, new division of the organization, moved from sales to marketing. My mom died unexpectedly, and my mom was my first best friend. I mean,
Mhm.
girls' trips and just all the things. I mean, we did all the things, and I counted a blessing now because I'm like, wow, I have so many rich memories.
Yeah.
As a teenager, in my early 20s and my 20s with my mom, where we just really were just like good girlfriends. Honestly, the relationship that I long for now, but had a lot of that early on. And it rocked my world. And I can remember maybe about 7 or 8 months after that happened, I process a lot through writing. And so I had started, writing, and I had always been journaling, but then I started, on certain days, I remember like the first Mother's Day and the first, Christmas, the holidays,
Yeah.
that sometimes can be really tough. I shared my writing in like a blog format. And so I remember initially thinking like, okay, oh, this is just kind of like a blog, and I'll just, kind of share with other people who might need, um, you know, support in the same way. And eventually it ended up becoming my book, my first book, Thrive Through It. And I never thought that I would write a book around grief, or that the topic of grief would resonate in a corporate setting, or just in the way that it has. But for me, just this idea that we are not rubber bands. Like, resilience is not about trying to bounce back to where you
Yeah.
are. Like, I'll never be the woman that I was before, my
Yeah.
mom died. There's so much about me that changed through that process. And there's so many ways that I've grown through it. And so I think sometimes having resources that help. So if you're on LinkedIn, I did want you to know that I have a LinkedIn learning course. It's called Thriving Through Career Challenges. It was such a full circle moment. LinkedIn reached out, and of all the topics, and y'all know how we do, like when they originally reached out about a LinkedIn learning course, I'm like, okay, let me give them all of my like super corporate topics, like, networking and emotional intelligence and just all these things. And we started talking about my book because it's, you know, positioned behind me. And they're like, oh, that, can we do a course on that? And I'm like, you want to do a course on career grief? They're like, yes, that's what people need. So I hope that it's helpful for you. Check it out if you have a version of LinkedIn that allows you to access LinkedIn Learning for free. If not, I'll post a link where you can access the course for free in the comments. That'll be helpful if you're experiencing any type of transition. What about you? Resources or things, that tools that have been helpful for you, or that you have that you think would be helpful to people on this topic?
Yeah, I'll definitely link. I'll put it in the chat as well, and it's just a free guide to help you. And it's so funny that we are aligned in a number of ways, but it literally is just, it's a five tool guide to help you work through challenges. Because the one thing that life does is it shifts, it changes. There's so much that happens, and like you said earlier, grief isn't only when you lose a loved one. Grief happens in so many different phases and stages of our lives, and learning how we can show up authentically, honoring, hey, I'm not okay, or hey, this is where I need help. It is okay. Perfection is not required. It really is not required. What you do have to do and what is required is honoring what your needs are, because when you honor you first, it really does allow you to show up much, much better for others. I'm going to, once we end this out, I'll go ahead and add that link up there.
Yeah.
And Doreen, thank you so much for sharing that. It definitely sounds like you are having such a challenging time, especially, not knowing kind of who you are or where you're going. What I definitely would suggest for you in that is you're going to need to take some very serious time to now rediscover who you are in this next and new phase of your life, because your life has now forever been changed. And so now you have to get to know you again, much like you do when you're dating someone, where you spend intentional time, you learn, you talk, you discuss. I really and truly would suggest you now get to know you again and figure out, in these moments, in this time, or in this season, what is it that I need? What type of support, what type of therapy would work best for me? How can I honor what it is that I need on a consistent basis? It doesn't count if you just do it once. It doesn't count if you just do it twice. What does consistency look like? And consistency might not be an everyday thing for you. Consistency might be twice a week. For me, I can't work out every day. I don't like the gym like that, but I promised myself once or twice a week. Once or twice a week,
Yeah.
just so I have the energetic strength to show up to do all the other things that I have to do. But I'm sending you so much love. I Lord
Yes.
knows I know how
Same.
tough that can be. So figure out who you are now, because you are different, and get to know that person so that you can find out what brings you joy now, because what
Yeah.
brought you joy previously might not bring you joy anymore. So it's honoring the new phase and stage that you're in, and being okay. Get you at least one person, whether it's your therapist or a friend, that you can tell your honest truth to, so that they can help you work through things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doreen, for sharing that. And I think for all of us, that now version of us, like who
Mhm.
we are now, I think it is such a critical component of emotional intelligence that we do not talk about enough. Like the
Yeah.
you on the other side of the disruption, the change, the
Mhm.
loss is a different version, and that's okay. You're getting to know that now version, but you're also reintroducing that now version to other people. And I think that authenticity comes in that second half of like, in order to do that, you've got to be aware of the
Yeah.
now version of you. So take that time for yourself. But we are so glad that you're here. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa says she's glad to hear us sharing real human experiences at work. Yes, 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 yes. It's so important to us. And Melissa also had a question. So we'll answer this quickly before we wrap up. I would like to know more about perspective on ERGs, how to establish their effectiveness. I have so many thoughts on this. Alechia, do you want to share first, or I can, whichever way we want to do it?
Okay. For me, effectiveness is determined by what the goals are. So if you do not initially, on the onset, establish what the goals of the ERG, establish what those goals will be, and also allow for flexibility when things need to change and shift and grow. I'm so sorry, guys. I have a gnat who is literally trying to take me out. But if you don't establish what those are from the onset, it's very, very difficult to be effective, because anything you don't measure cannot grow. And so establishing first, like I said, the goals, and then creating a pathway or a blueprint that allows you to achieve said goals is necessary in order to be effective. If you're just meeting so that you can say we're all in the room and we can support each other, that's cool if that's your goal. However, if the goal, which is what I firmly believe the goal should be of your ERG group, is to help folks with mentorship, sponsorship, advocates, to help them grow and scale in their career, to be able to create a community of not just support, but also one that lends itself to advancement, you're going to need to ensure that you have specific things in place. Is it bringing folks in? Is it creating a growth pathway so that you can grow in the business? Is it even honestly learning how to succession plan so that you can position yourself to, up level your skills so that you can be able to operate in certain places and spaces? Is it having a budget? Okay, having a budget that allows the folks in that ERG group to get certifications and to go to events, that they can expand their skill set. I do believe they are effective when there are measurements, and goals that are consistently adjusted, addressed, and adhered to.
Yeah, 120% agree. I would add to that, I have found in my work in the DEI space that the ERGs are typically treated as or started with a very tactical mindset. So they're started in good effort and good faith as a way to connect and support communities of that same affinity. And what we've seen to be most effective is the ideal space and place for ERGs is that they are connected to the strategic goals, one of the organization, of the business. That's
Yes.
why you see some organizations changing names to business resource groups, things of that nature. So that's one. But then two, they're directly connected to the talent management strategy of the organization. What that, let's say how that helps instead of the negative side of it. What that helps you with is ensuring that the activity that's happening in the ERG is actually mirroring and supporting the broader
Yes.
goals of the organization. So when you talk about, Alechia, the goals, I think it's beyond like what programs do we want to have this quarter, but the
Mhm.
deeper question is like, how are we connected back to how the organization is growing and evolving? So a quick picture of what that could look like is you expanding your DEI lens to think about how do we build a more inclusive organization to grow the business. So
Yes.
are there potential innovative avenues or channels of business that you could leverage an ERG to maybe think innovatively around, or to pilot in some way, or to share insights on, in a way that is helping to grow the bottom line of the organization, but
Mhm.
also as you look at the retention of that group, how are
Yeah.
you supporting those goals through the ERG? And then the last thing that I would say, which is often a huge miss, we saw some increase in this in Q4 of 2020 and into 2021, but not near enough organizations compensate the ERG leaders for the work
Because
that
it's extra work.
are doing to save you money. So
Yeah.
ERGs at the end of the day do help with retention. They do help to create a safe space. But often what you find is people are doing that work off of the side of their desk while still being charged to maintain their performance and be a high performer in their 9 to 5 role, which is why you see some groups and some high performing, diverse talent, whether it's women or professionals of color, Black professionals, pull out of ERG leadership because it's not compensated, whether either on your performance management or literally through financial bonus compensation. So those are just some things to think about that I believe make it more effective and impactful. Having a
Absolutely.
strategic goal, having a sponsor that's at the executive level, but then not just having a budget, but having a substantial budget that includes compensating the leaders that are
Absolutely.
heading up the charge of those groups.
Ooh, child,
Great,
listen, that was so good.
great question, Melissa. Thank you for that. All right, y'all. Well, this was awesome today. Again, we have some homework. We're going to get into the comments and link out some of the resources that we shared, but also link some of the past few conversations. And we invite you to follow us, connect with us, join us. And if there are topics that you want to hear more about that are going to help you to show up and really transform your experience as a leader in your organization and really thrive in your career, or if you're a learning and development professional and you're thinking about programming ways to retain talent, Alechia and I get to do similar work, and we certainly would love to bring you along on this journey as we are helping leaders to show up more authentically and to thrive fully in their career. Thank y'all so much for joining us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.